Testing. Testing. Can you all hear me clearly? Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. My name is Annie Chen, and today we are going to talk about anti-money laundering. In our last lecture, we talked about the basics of money laundering. And today we are going to talk about the application of computer forensic and data analytics in combating financial fraud and money laundering. And this will be our last lecture for the program. And we need to do the evaluation in this lecture too. So let's have a look at what I have planned for you this morning. Firstly, last time, as you may recall, we discussed the basics of money laundering and how to say counter money laundering and terrorist financing. And we also mentioned about the SFC enforcement action. And for this morning, I want to say cover the HKMA disciplinary action on AML so that you would have a complete picture as to the regulators, what they think, and what they are doing in terms of taking enforcement action, focusing on the two major regulators. Last lecture, SFC, this lecture, HKMA. And as you may recall, HKMA is responsible for supervising banks and SVF. And SFC is responsible for brokerages, asset management company, corporate advisor, and say corporations licensed by the SFC. And then, as you may recall, last time we mentioned a little bit about, say, virtual asset, right? Because virtual asset is now one of the focus of the Hong Kong government. And I'm going to touch a little bit on that this morning. And then I'm going to talk about RegTech in AML and CFT and how to use RegTech in terms of fraud investigation. And then after that, I'm going to talk about trade-based money laundering, which is a type of money laundering using trading activities and very often involving banks. And then I'm going to talk about trade-based money laundering, the trends and risk and the challenges, and what are the red flags you can look out for. And then I'm going to cover computer forensic. And at the end of our lecture, we are going to do a group exercise. And in terms of this exercise, I want to say, cover what we have learned in our first lesson, i.e. forensic investigation, the techniques that we have learned, and then a little bit about AML, and then how to apply what you have learned in terms of the whole course in a case study. So that's the plan for this morning. Any question before we move on? No, okay. Now, in terms of the HKMA, in terms of 2023, there are two major cases taken by the HKMA against banks in relation to money laundering and the related breaches of the regulation. Let's have a look at the EFG Bank. Now, I mentioned that banks, no matter it is international bank, local bank, Chinese banks, they are all supervised by the HKMA in Hong Kong. In terms of EFG, it is an international bank. It is operating as the Hong Kong branch. And in any event, because the branch is located in Hong Kong, so it is subject to the regulation of the HKMA here in Hong Kong, right? And of course, people working in international bank, you will be aware that apart from if you work in a Hong Kong branch of an international bank, you would need to be aware of the Hong Kong regulation in the first place. And on the other hand, you also need to follow the head office law and regulation. And in terms of this EFG Hong Kong, the HKMA has looked at the documentation of the bank in Hong Kong, and they found out that EFG Hong Kong failed to conduct CDD on customers transfer from another FI. And very often the banks in Hong Kong, they will think that, okay, if I have customer transfer from another financial institution or transfer from my head office, I don't have to do anything, right? And this is wrong. This is wrong because the concept of the regulator is that every company, every operation in Hong Kong has to follow the law in Hong Kong. And in terms of customer due diligence and record keeping, they have to do it no matter it is a transfer of customers from other banks or from the head office. They also need to make sure that they complete the necessary procedures in terms of understanding who the customers are, right? Say, for example, customer due diligence, and in terms of this, EFG Hong Kong failed to do that. And on the other hand, this is in relation to customers transfer from another financial institution. Apart from that, the onboarding of customer due diligence and ongoing customer due diligence has got deficiencies. The reason is that, as you may recall, last time we studied AML, we mentioned that in a number of situations, we need to do a CDD, right? In terms of onboarding, right? Onboarding of a new client, in terms of cases where you believe that the current transaction of the particular customer does not commensurate with the profile of the customer on file, right? Then you need to do additional CDD. And apart from that, whenever that you see that there is potential suspicious transaction or irregular transaction, then you need to do ongoing CDD, right? So they did not do the ongoing CDD, and the onboarding CDD was not done properly. And apart from that, last time we also mentioned that the financial institution and all regulated industry has to comply with the requirement to have policies and procedures on AML and CFT, right? In terms of EFG, they have the policies, but they don't have the required procedures up to the standard required by the regulator. And so they were penalized for 16 million for all these 3 areas, right? And as you may recall, CDD is very important, and policies and procedures is very important. And apart from that, in terms of the ongoing CDD measures, the period of time is quite long, from 2012 to 2018, right? So a 6 years period, they failed to do that. So the HKMA believe that this is not acceptable. Because very often when regulators decide how much to fine or to penalize the licensed corporations, they will depend on the seriousness of the breach of the legislation, and also whether there is an intention to violate the regulation. Probably there is no intention, but the point is that there are a number of areas of deficiencies, and also the period of time is quite long, 6 years. And apart from that, the policies and procedures are the basic requirement, basic ingredient that a bank should have, even though it's a branch. It is an operation in Hong Kong with a license obtained from the HKMA. So it is not acceptable not to have procedures. As you may recall, last time we discussed that in terms of the law, especially the AMLO, right? The AMLO mentioned that 2 areas very important. One is CDD, customer due diligence. The other one is record keeping, right? And you may recall that an employee supervisor, i.e. senior management, and the company may be penalized. Why is that? Because they are personally liable if they fail to do anything, right? But employee has got an excuse, right, as their defense. What is that? If the company doesn't have proper policies and procedures, there is nothing that the staff can follow properly to comply with the law, then the employee will not be put into jail, right? Would not be penalized. On the other hand, the bank will be penalized. It is in these circumstances that the HKMA believed that EFG did not put in place effective policies and procedures to allow the staff to carry out all the necessary work. Okay, so the employee was not penalized, but the bank was penalized substantially, 16 million, because the bank failed to do the policies and procedures. Okay, so because of all these areas, they are the basic ingredient of an anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing regime required, right? And let's have a look at Westpac Bank, also Hong Kong branch, right? And in terms of Westpac Hong Kong, they delay in completing the periodic review for some customers from June 2016 to May 2017, so it's 1 year, right? And in terms of this, you may recall that last time we mentioned that for every high-risk customers, how often do you need to review the CDD? Every year. Every year, you need to do the review of their customer due diligence. And in this case, Westpac failed to do that, right? And failed to establish and maintain effective procedures in relation to periodic review for customers. Why did they have this deficiency? Because they did not have the policies and procedures. Here is the HKMA said that they did not have the necessary procedures. Maybe they have a very general policies, but they did not have the necessary procedure to tell the staff when to do it, how to do it. Okay, so this is also failure of the bank itself to train the staff, to require the staff to do the necessary procedure to follow the Hong Kong regulation. And so that's why Westpac Bank was also fined. And the amount was 4 million. Let's have a look last year. Cathay United Bank, it is also have the same failure in terms of AML, CFT. Firstly, they failed to conduct the ongoing CDD and enhance CDD in respect of high-risk situation. I mentioned that high-risk customers, you need to review on a yearly basis, and whenever there are risky area identified, right? And in terms of Cathay United Bank, they failed to conduct ongoing CDD, and they also failed to conduct enhanced CDD on high-risk customers in respect of high-risk situation for a long period of time, 2012 to 2016, right? So they were fined substantially 11 million, right? And also they failed to establish effective procedures for ongoing CDD and EDD, right? So goes back to the basics, right? Failed to do CDD and also failed to prepare the policies and procedures properly so as to allow the staff to follow, right? And they did not take reasonable measure to ensure proper safeguard access to prevent money laundering and terrorist financing risks, right? Because it is important to ensure that you have the basic framework in place within the bank, making sure that all the staff know how to do it, when to do it, and how to ensure that the measures are in place, right? But they fail to do it. Let's have a look at Commerzbank AG, also Hong Kong branch. It was also in last year, and they were fined 6 million because they failed to carry out the CDD measures of 17 customers before establishing business relationship, right? And last time we mentioned that you need to do the CDD before commencement of the business, right? Unless in certain circumstances that the senior management believe that the risk is acceptable and can be confined, and they signed and approve it in terms of the documentation, right? And here, in terms of Commerzbank, they failed to carry out CDD, and they did not do any, say, precaution or any documentation. And also, in terms of 12 customers, they have been continuing the business relationship with Commerzbank AG within a period of time from 6 to 46 months. And the bank did not terminate the business relationship, even though they are unable to comply with the requirement, with the say, providing documentation in terms of the CDD, right? So this is not acceptable to the regulator. Apart from that, they fail to establish procedures in terms of identifying PEP, politically exposed persons. I'm going to talk a little bit more about a politically exposed person shortly. And they fail to establish or maintain procedures on manual, checking the completeness of CDD measures before establishing business relationship, because they need to have the policies, they need to have the procedures, and they also need to have the checking regime, so as to ensure that someone is completing the CDD procedures, and the other another colleague, i.e. maybe a more senior colleague, is reviewing it, and then the supervisor or the senior management will be, say, approving it, right? But they did not have such procedures in place. So they were fined 6 million. As you can see, all these recent cases, they are, say, non-compliance with the regulation in terms of CDD, in terms of, say, not identifying the high-risk customers, or did not do the necessary EDD in relation to high-risk customer. And apart from that, the most important thing is the policies and procedures were not in place, i.e. the regime was not properly set up, which is the basic requirement of the regulators. So they were penalized. Let's have a look at another 4 cases in 2021. And this was major news in 2021 in November, because the HKMA made an announcement in November 2021 and saying that they have fined 44.2 million against 4 banks a total of 44.2 million. And in relation to China Construction Bank Asia Corporation, the CTBC Bank Hong Kong branch, ICBC Asia, as well as UBS AG Hong Kong branch, in terms of breaches of the AML and CFT requirements. The common problem in relation to these 4 banks were in relation to ongoing monitoring of customer relationship, i.e. they did not do the ongoing CDD on the customers, and deficiencies in doing enhanced customer due diligence in high-risk situation. As you can see, these are the key area and the basic requirement required by the regulators, right? And it has been properly set out in the AMLO, i.e. doing the CDD, right? Proper record keeping. And then in terms of, say, high-risk situation, high-risk customers, you need to do ongoing CDD and make sure that you have, say, the basic regime in place so as to allow all the staff to follow, right? So they failed to do that and they were penalized. And specifically, the ongoing CDDs, CTBC Hong Kong failed to take appropriate review steps to ensure the documents were up to date and relevant, right? As I mentioned to you earlier, while I was a regulator, the view of the regulator is that they want to ensure that the regulated entities will follow the law and the regulation. And if they are unable to provide the documents or the supporting documentation to show that they have done according to the law, then the result is that they breach the law and they will be penalized, right? And in terms of CCB Asia, ICBC Asia, and UBS Hong Kong, they did not conduct timely periodic review for certain customers, especially those high-risk customers. As I mentioned earlier, the high-risk customer, you need to review it on an yearly basis, right? And a lot of the banks, they said, well, we did not have sufficient staff, we did not have manpower to do the annual review. And so there were backlogged, and the backlog wasn't really long. But the thing is, regulators are regulators. They will follow the law strictly. So if you breach the law, you will be penalized, right? And basically, all 4 banks contravened the requirement of CDD under the AMLO. So as I mentioned earlier, in terms of deciding the disciplinary action, it depends on the seriousness of the findings. And also, very often, regulator will say they want to send a deterrent message to the market to ensure that the other banks will learn the lesson, and they will quickly improve their system before the regulators come and do the inspection, right? And apart from that, the bank's remedial action and enhancement measures would also be taken into account, i.e. some of the banks, if they understand that they have done something wrong, they immediately take remedial action. And then that would be taken into account, i.e. say, for example, they engage external consultant to come in and help them in terms of, say, quickly preparing the procedures to teach the staff how to do each of the steps, right? And say if their CDD was not properly done, and they will, say, mobilize some additional resources to help quickly, say, resolve the problem, then that would be taken into account. And apart from that, the regulator also look at whether the licensed corporation has got any disciplinary record. As I mentioned last time, right? If you can recall, the some of the financial institutions, if they have, say, breached the regulation once before, and now that this is the second time for breaching the same regulation in terms of, say, AML, the penalty will normally be at least double, right? So depending on whether there is any disciplinary record for the same licensed corporation. And so common to the Executive Director, Enforcement and AML of the HKMA said, well, banks has an important gatekeeper's role in the AML and CFT requirements, right? So if the banks did not do all that is required by the regulators, people would not say would not trust the system in Hong Kong, and it would affect Hong Kong as an international financial center, right? And so the role of financial institutions and regulated industries in terms of AML and CFT is very important. Now, apart from, I mentioned that HKMA, apart from supervising the banks, they also supervise the SVF, right? Store value facilities and the payment systems, right? Because the AML and CFT regulation apply to payment systems and store value facilities, and they need to get a license from the HKMA, and they also need to comply with the AML and CFT requirements, similar to banks and other financial institutions. And 33 Financial Services Limited has got a license by the SFC, and although they are not a bank, but the thing is, the HKMA will use the same standard, right? Same standard for the same type of regulated industries. And 33 Financial Services Limited was deficient in terms of, say, policies and procedures. Same, right? Same thing. Actually, you can see that the same thing happened again and again. But some of the banks, they may be thinking of we may not be the next one to be inspected, right? But they were wrong, right? Lack of adequate and appropriate guidance in the policies and procedures to recognize the signs of any possible money laundering or terrorist financing activities. And also, they have problem in terms of the time frame for clearing the alerts, right? As you may recall, in terms of banks, regulated industries, SVF operators, they have to check their clients and also related parties through the either database or government website in terms of the blacklisted entities, right? And very often they have, when they do, say, the onboarding, they will have some alert from the database. And unfortunately, a lot of these, say, SVF, they will say that we don't have time to go through the backlog of the alerts because there are so many alerts. Every day we have hundreds or thousands of alerts, and we won't be able to handle them. And actually, the regulator's view is that that was inappropriate scrutiny of transaction, and the clearance of the alerts was not timely, which will not be, say, complying with the law. Because if you use some tools, right, or technology to help you in terms of, say, identifying and checking the whether any of the customers or potential customers is on the blacklist, then you will not have a lot of alerts. And also, if you have set the parameter properly, you may not have thousands of alerts on a daily basis, right? You should use a proper parameter and work closely with the system analysts so that they can help you to set the parameter properly, and then do the analysis and make sure that the alerts are reasonable, right? And identify those who are actual, say, terrorists, or at least the false hits would not be too many, right? And they also fail to examine the background and the purpose of overseas cash withdrawal, right? And through automated teller machines, in particular, when third-party deposits were the source of fund. And the source of fund and the as I discussed with you last time, the source of fund is very important. Source of wealth is very important. And in particular, third-party deposit, third-party payments are also some of the key area identified by regulators, right? But in terms of 33 financial services, they fail to do that. They fail to examine the background and the purpose of overseas cash withdrawal. And they did not do any, take any action to check all these suspicious transactions, and fail to set out the findings of background and the purpose of transaction in writing in terms of the rationale or the clearing of the alerts, right? And sometimes some say regulated industries, they said that they have done all that is necessary, but they don't have supporting documentation to prove that they have gone through the process properly and decided that which alert is a true alert, which alert is a false alert, right? True alert means that the customers that they are going to onboard is on the blacklist, right? So they should not be working together with them, right? Should not open the bank account with them, right? And the false alert is could be a similar name, right? And that's why, apart from asking you the name, they will ask you the identity card number, Chinese name, English name, right? And ask you the date of birth, right? All this information needs to be inputted in the system so that they can check whether you are one of the parties listed in the blacklist, right? So in terms of 33 financial services, they did not do it properly. And as you can see, they were reprimanded and fined 0.875 million, right? You may ask, how come the banks, they were penalized substantially, but SVF say penalized at a lower rate, right? And very often regulators will check, will see whether the establishment, say for example a bank, they are under a big organization and they have a big establishment, and for SVF they may not have a very big organization and they may not be able to say make the payment in terms of the fine, right? And as I see that some licensed corporations, when the regulators want to say fine them, they will discuss with them. We are going, based on the situation of your case, we are going to fine you this amount. And some licensed corporation would discuss with the regulators, right? If you fine me this amount of money, I will be bankrupt. I won't be able to continue business, right? So the regulators would would be willing to discuss, and sometimes depending on how the attitude of the senior management. If the attitude of the senior management is good and they have no, say, previous disciplinary record, and they are very cooperative with regulators, the fine could be negotiated and could be reduced. But depending on the situation, right? And actually, the HKMA and the SFC also have the fining guideline, which sets out clearly in what circumstances the fine will be higher, in what circumstances the fine will be lower. And it was also set out clearly that it is possible for settlement agreement to be signed between the regulator and the licensed corporation, right? So everything is quite transparent. And ePayLink's technology, that was in December 2021, also contravention of the SVF ordinance in relation to AML and CFT. And this is also in respect of control deficiency. You know, you need to use the name screening, i.e. check and make sure that they are not on the blacklist, right? And taking additional measure for enhancing customer due diligence, but they fail to do that properly. And apart from that, in terms of transaction monitoring, a lot of a substantial amount of alerts were generated but not clear. Similar to the previous one, 33 financial services, and the regulator is of the view that this is not acceptable, because if there are so many alerts, you do not know which one is true alert, which one is not a true alert, right? Then you go ahead and then open the account for the client. So what's the point of doing the name screening against the blacklist if you don't use that for your evaluation, right? So in terms of this particular case, HKMA also see that they have inappropriate parameters being set in the system. So that's why there are a lot of alerts which are false alert, right? So it is some problem in terms of the management of the transaction monitoring framework. And apart from that, they fail to check the name of the beneficial owner of corporate customers, which are not conducted subsequent to the onboarding, because as I mentioned that corporate customers, you need to check the beneficial owner, right? And up to the individual, the person, right? The individual, because a corporation may have shareholders, which are also corporations. But for corporations, there is no use, because you do not know who is controlling that particular company. So you need to go through a further level, to the level where you know which individual is controlling that particular company. And then make sure that you have all the parties' name put in the name screening system. And in terms of ePayLink, they failed to do that. So they were fined 1 million. Now going back to 2018, right? JP Morgan Chase, Hong Kong branch, they also have failure in terms of, say, identifying and handling wire transfer properly. They did not put in the originator's details, customer due diligence, continuing monitoring, all these, they failed to do that. And last time we mentioned that for, say, overseas companies, you will not be able to check the company search in Hong Kong. You would require the certificate of incumbency, but they JP Morgan Chase failed to request that particular information, and they did not verify the ultimate beneficial owner. And of course, high-risk customer, they did not do the annual review properly. So there are a lot of failure in terms of JP Morgan Chase, and it is a major bank, so it was fined 12.5 million, because in such a big corporation, they should have a very strong compliance team to ensure that all these are done, but they fail in every aspect. So they were fined substantially. Shanghai Commercial Bank, basically, they did not monitor the business relationship with the customer in terms of their background, the purpose of the transaction. Because in terms of suspicious transaction or irregular transaction, banks are required to ask the customer the purpose of the transaction. Say, for example, sometimes when you go to a bank, you want to do a substantial transfer, right? You may be asked by a bank, right? What's the purpose of the transaction, right? That's complying with the regulators' requirement. And especially you're quite young, for say elderlies, if they go to a bank and want to transfer a substantial amount of money, they would also be asked by the bank officers, right? The purpose of the transaction, right? And in terms of this is, when the bank is doing the ongoing monitoring, they see that some transactions appear to be irregular, they should ask the client in terms of their purpose before they proceed with the transactions. And they also need to have, say, proper procedures. And before they accept a client, they should carry out CDD, right? But they failed to do all this, and they were fined 5 million. So in a nutshell, you can see that the HKMA's focus is on CDD, in particular, ongoing CDD, right? And also they use a risk-based approach. In terms of high-risk customer, definitely you need to do the annual review of the CDD, right? In terms of high-risk customers, say, for example, politically exposed persons, people from high-risk countries, then you would need to do additional work, right? And also the HKMA is quite concerned in terms of the ultimate beneficial ownership, right? And making sure that all the beneficial owners are checked in the screening of the database, and making sure that you are not, say, working together with the people in the blacklist, right? Transaction monitoring system effectiveness is also another area which the HKMA is quite concerned, because on a regular basis, you would need to look at the transactions and see whether they are reasonable and compare to the customer's profile before you understand whether you need to do ongoing CDD, right? And of course, apart from these, as we can see in our previous cases, right? We see that policies and procedure is also another quite important area, right? And whenever policies and procedures were not properly prepared, then that would also be one of the major cases and in terms of disciplinary action. So these are the key areas that the HKMA is looking at, right? Next, I want to share with you the regulatory technology, RegTech. As I mentioned, well, because there are a lot of procedures, a lot of compliance procedures that need to be done, and it involves a lot of manpower, right? So some of the banks, they were unable to comply with the regulators' requirement. They said that we don't have sufficient manpower and we did not have sufficient time to deal with the alerts, right? So in recent years, the regulators are recommending the banks and financial institutions to use technology to help them in terms of complying with the AML and CFT requirements. So basically, RegTech is the use of technology such as data analytics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, distributed ledger, or blockchain to help the regulated industry banks to work on all these AML and CFT and other compliance issues, right? So you specialize in data analytics and especially in terms of financial fraud. So this is a hot topic and a hot issue in town. So you will be in hot demand after you graduated because a lot of opportunity in the financial industry requiring people to help in terms of RegTech, right? Making sure that the use of technology is properly applied in different banks and financial institutions and regulated industries. And in any event, RegTech contribute to the simplification of regulation and streamlining of compliance because very often, banks will have a big team of compliance, right? But on the other hand, other regulated industries such as SVF or a brokerage house, they may not have a very big team of compliance, maybe just a few people. So a few people may not do a large quantity of compliance work. And that's why the use of technology, such as data analytics, artificial intelligence, all these will help them a lot in terms of making sure that they comply with the requirement of the regulators. And in terms of the insight from the HKMA in terms of AML, CFT, RegTech, and a number of technology are now currently used by the major banks and regulated industry, say, for example, robotic process automation, RPA, OCR, artificial intelligence, network analytics, machine learning, NLP, and also cloud computing, distributed ledger technology, all these, right? And these help the regulated industry a lot in terms of client acceptance, in terms of ongoing monitoring, in terms of transaction monitoring, in terms of CDD, right? Say, for example, facial recognition, voice recognition helped in terms of onboarding of customers. Because, say, for example, during COVID period, people would not be able to come to a bank to open a bank account. So a lot of the banks, they will use, say, facial or voice recognition to help in terms of the onboarding of customers. Some examples. Now, apart from doing the basic compliance work, RegTech also help in terms of the network analytics for investigation. Say, for example, when there are suspected irregular transactions, then very often it is used, say, technology is used to identify suspicious activity, irregular patterns, right? If very often regulators, whenever they have issues with regulated entities, they will ask them, how do you identify your suspicious transaction? How do you conduct your monitoring of the transactions? And if the, say, a responsible officer or senior management say that, I will look at them by reading it or looking at the my monitor, very often they will say that, and the regulator will say that, how do I know that you have done your monitoring properly. Nothing that they can show the regulators, right? So they said the responsible officer, say, for example, very often my client will say, wow, we look at the monitor and then we see that there is no irregular transactions. And so we have done our monitoring. So the regulators say that not sufficient, not appropriate, right? You need to show us, you need to show the regulator that you have, say, a system whereby it will allow you to identify suspicious transaction. You will be able to look at the irregular pattern, i.e. irregular pattern will be highlighted, say, from a system, so that you will review and check and then decide whether this is suspicious, right? And if so, then you would say proceed with escalating the matter to the JFIU, right? And say, for example, network analytics, it would be, say, basically able to identify, say, multiple attempts to log into single online banking account from IP addresses from different jurisdictions, right, used by criminals to log in your bank account through different IP addresses in different locations. Because very often, as we may recall, there were leakages of some information of some companies, right? So your password, your say identity information will be disclosed to say the public, and of course the criminals, they will be able to use the leaked information to conduct their criminal activities, right? And very often some people will use the same password for different bank accounts. Then the criminal will try, right? Once they have tried and see that that is successful, they will be trying to get money out of your bank account. And so the important thing is network analytics will be able to help in terms of, say, they use the IP address, the transactional data in terms of login attempt to online banking account. They will know the date, the time, the location. And then if there are multiple attempts to log in a particular bank, client's bank account, then they will check and get the information. So network analytics is useful for investigation as well as for compliance. RPA within the name screening will be able to, say, help banks and financial institutions to check those information regarding their customers, and they will help in terms of transaction monitoring. And of course, machine learning, NLP will also help in terms of name screening. And currently there are quite a lot of small and medium-sized RegTech company being set up in Hong Kong, especially in Cyberport. And they were working together closely with the government and say, as well as with different universities, trying to develop more and more RegTech systems to help banks and regulated industries to improve the compliance and investigation relating to anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing. And network analytics is also useful for fraud investigation as well as trade-based money laundering, which we are going to talk about shortly. And let me update you on the AML and CFT. In July 2023, in the Fraud and Financial Crime Summit, And common to the Executive Director, Enforcement and AML of HKMA, she mentioned that the HKMA is in support of data-driven supervision, i.e. AML surveillance enhancement program, right? And on one hand, RegTech has been developing quite well in terms of different banks and financial institutions. On the other hand, the HKMA itself is also using technology to help them to focus on high-risk banks and financial institutions so that they will know which banks are of higher risk. They will go there to do the inspection earlier or in a more frequent manner. So the regulators are using technology, and this type of regulated technology helping regulators, we call SupTech, supervisors technology, SupTech. And in terms of banks, we call it RegTech, right? The technology used by banks. So both the regulators as well as the banks and financial institutions, they were enhancing their technology and trying to make use of technology to help them to improve the operation, especially focusing on AML and CFT. And Ms. Chu of the HKMA mentioned that the 60% of the retail banks are deploying network analytics, right? And they see that there has been an increasing number of intelligence-led suspicious transaction reports, right? And that was very encouraging. And the HKMA has also worked together with the industry, the police, and launched the Financial Intelligence Evaluation Sharing Tool. In short, it is called FINES. And basically, the bank, say, information between banks, they can share in such platform so as to detect and to combat fraud and mule account network. You know, quite a lot of the criminals, they will use nominee accounts, and these nominee accounts could be say housewife, could be unemployed people. And recently I have spoken to some friends who work in the police and in terms of this particular area. And she mentioned to me that very often criminals, they will say in the street and say ask some old ladies, some retired people, and asking them, oh, do you want to open a bank account? Okay, you can open a bank account, and give me your identity card. I will jot down the details, right? And then I will give you 50% parking shop coupon. And then in such a way, the identity card and the details were provided to the fraudster, and the fraudster will use the identity card to open bank accounts, and then the bank account together with the ATM card will be provided to the fraudster, and the fraudster will use these bank account to launder the money. And at the end of the day, someone will receive a demand from a bank saying that, oh, you have all us say 3 million, 4 million, and through your say credit card application or your lending by the bank, right? Which the old lady who just got the $50 parking shop coupon know nothing, but she became a nominee account or a mule account used by the criminals, right? So a lot of the nominees account, they they were involved in terms of money laundering, but they did not know, right? And they were used by criminals, right? So some of them know, some of them they do not know, right? So a lot of these nominees accounts were used by criminals and in terms of the laundering of funds. So this is something that police and the regulators are very concerned. And also macro analytics, it applies to financial crime data across 8 retail bank and virtual banks. Basically, 8 retail bank and some virtual banks, they work together to share the financial crime data in order to help out each other. As you may recall, in my first lesson, I mentioned that I work on an investigation of a number of banks being cheated by 2 companies and a number of individuals, right? And basically, because the banks do not share information, and that's why a number of them were cheated at the same time based and by the criminals using the same set of fabricated documents, right? And now that because of this macro analytics framework, people will work together, i.e. banks and virtual banks will work together to share financial crime data so as to help out each other. I think that that is quite helpful. And in 2022, Carmen also mentioned that banking sector remains at high risk and of being exploited for illicit fund flow. And basically, the focus of the HKMA is analytics, right? Monitoring, making sure that transaction monitoring is key, and link up, i.e. private-public partnership. The government, the regulator is going to work together with the financial sector closely. Shall we take a break of 10 minutes and then we'll come back and talk about the other areas? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, let us resume. Now, next I want to share with you this money laundering and terrorist financing risk assessment report issued by the Hong Kong government in July 2022. And basically, it says that the money laundering risk of Hong Kong is medium to high. And the vulnerability, i.e. The risk awareness of AML is medium. And in terms of overall money laundering risk, in terms of the combination of the threat and the vulnerability is medium to high in terms of the risk. And in terms of the sectorial risk, i.e. each sectors, the risk of banking is of the highest in terms of high threat and also high in terms of vulnerability. The next is MSB, the money service operators. And in terms of securities, it's medium threat and medium vulnerability. And in terms of, say, insurance and money lenders, it's medium low in terms of threats and medium low in terms of vulnerability. And in terms of virtual asset, it considers that the threat is medium to low and the vulnerability is medium to medium high. That was in this report was done last year. And as you see that there are all sorts of issues regarding virtual assets, right? Different outbreak of, say, problems of virtual assets. So it is important for us to be aware of the types of virtual assets. Okay, let's have a look at let's have a look at the obligation of the FATF mutual evaluation, because Hong Kong has done a mutual evaluation in 2019, and it was performed by the FATF. And there are a number of areas that has been identified by the HKM, by the FATF, saying that Hong Kong needs to improve in terms of AML and CFT. And that's why in February this year, there was a technical compliance assessment by the FATF on Hong Kong. And the result was quite encouraging. And in any event, the Hong Kong government has taken a lot of action to improve. Say, for example, it has arranged a licensing regime for virtual asset service provider and dealers in precious metal and stones, right? And in terms of SFC, the focus is in terms of social media investment scams, and it is called run and dump schemes. Basically, a lot of the criminals, they will make use of brokerage houses to, say, a brokerage house and also the social media to encourage people to buy a particular type of listed shares. And then they said that they use, say, for example, KOL, right, to tell people that, wow, this particular listed shares is very good. You should buy it, right? So convince people to buy a thinly traded small cap stock at an inflated price. So a lot of people buy. So a lot of people buy, then the shares will go up. And then at a certain point in time, these criminals will dump their shares, right? Quickly sell all the shares. And then that would trigger the share price to go down. And then who's the victim? The victim is the general investor who has been going to the social media and hearing all these KOL telling them to buy. And then now that the share has gone down, they become the victims, right? So these are some of the rum and dump schemes focused by the SFC in terms of money laundering and terrorist financing. Why are they involved? Because these are criminal activities. As you may recall in our earlier lecture, any money generated from criminal activity is money laundering, right? They are criminally obtained proceeds, so they are involved in terms of money laundering, right? And the SFC also focused on nominee and dubious investment arrangements. And because quite a lot of the criminal, they will use nominee accounts. They ask people to open nominee account in different brokerage house, and then they will be trying to do some illegal activities, say, for example, conducting insider dealing, conducting market manipulation, etc. And third-party deposit and third-party payments are also some of the areas that the SFC is quite concerned. And as you can recall, last time when we met, we mentioned that the SFC has penalized a number of brokerage houses in terms of third-party deposit, irregular transactions in terms of third-party deposit, third-party payments that the brokerage house was not aware of and did not identify them as suspicious transactions, right? And in terms of VASP, right, virtual asset service providers, the Hong Kong government has introduced a licensing regime for VASP in terms of carrying of a business operating a virtual asset exchange, right? And the SFC become the supervisor for virtual assets. And in terms of licensed virtual assets, they also need to keep CDD and record keeping. And they also need to do the policies and procedures. They also need to go through the same requirement in terms of the other licensed corporations, i.e. the SFC can go and do the inspection on them at any time, right? And require documentation, right? So that's the latest update. And next, I would like to share with you trade-based money laundering, which is a type of money laundering relating to trading transactions. And the FATF is quite concerned in terms of trade-based money laundering. And it says that it's the process of disguising the process of crime, moving value through the use of trade transactions in order to legitimize their illicit origin or the activity. And in terms of trade-based money laundering, we see that there were trading of goods, right? But actually it's not the movement of goods, but the movement of money that is in concern. Because a lot of the criminals, they focus on the movement of money by disguising the movement of goods, right? So on the face of it is the transfer of goods, i.e. buying and selling of goods, right? But actually the movement of money is the key, right? Let's have a look. The FATF and the Egmont Group has issued the trade-based money laundering report in December 2020. It sets out the trends and the development of trade-based money laundering, and it has a number of case studies. If you have time, you can go to the FATF website and look at this particular report, it gives you some of the cases, right? And in March 2021, it also set out the risk indicators so that banks and financial institutions and licensed corporations would not be be defrauded. And let's have a look. In terms of the trades, very often it involved international trade and it involved financing, i.e. banks and financial institutions are involved, right? And the Wolfberg Group also mentioned that there are 80% of the international trades processed by financial institutions is open account trading. Open account involve a sale where the goods are shipped and delivered before payment is due, right? And so very often when criminals, they want to say, do the transfer of goods and money, they will arrange the open account, i.e. they sell the goods, they ship the goods, they deliver the goods before payment is arranged. And before the payment is arranged, they go to the bank and ask bank for the money, right? And sometimes it's a real transaction, i.e. the goods are actually shipped. And sometimes there is no shipping of goods, but just fake documentation to deceive the bank, right? On the one hand, they said that transfer of money, but on the other hand, sometimes they will use some companies to arrange transfer of goods from one party to overseas parties, and then deceive the banks by lending the money. And then the money was transferred. And then at the end of the day, the company went bankrupt. And so the banks will lose all the money. And the Wolfberg Group involved a number of international banks which work together as a group so as to help out each other. And it involves, say, Bank of America, Citibank, and a number of international banks. They work together basically to share information. And that's why a lot of the banks were quite concerned in terms of trade-based money laundering. And in terms of trade-based money laundering, a lot of the goods that the criminal used were high value, low volume products, such as diamond, right? Precious metal, jewelry. So high value, low volume products. And on the other hand, there could be low value, high volume products, such as secondhand clothing, secondhand mobile phones. These could be used by criminals to do the trade-based money laundering. Why is that? Because we mentioned that there was transfer of goods and transfer of money, right? And very often, the key is not the transfer of the goods, but the key is the transfer of the criminally obtained money. On the one hand, they may say deceive the bank in, say, lending them money. On the other hand, there could be genuine money obtained from previous criminally obtained money, right? And they need to transfer the money from one part of the world to another part of the world. And so they use goods with wide pricing margins, right? Say, for example, one bag of diamond, how much are we talking about? And in the invoice, it says 10 million US dollar, but does it worth 10 million US dollar? Probably not, right? And then say, for example, in the invoice at 10 million US dollar, and the actual price could be 1 million US dollar, and then another 8 million dirty money is included in the transfer. So the criminal will transfer 1 plus 9 million, 10 million US dollar to an overseas organization for transfer of the diamond, right, in the amount of 10 million. So they can include the dirty money in the transaction so as to launder the money from one part of the world to another part of the world, right? Another area is goods with extended trade cycles. Say, for example, you see that there were goods transferring across multiple jurisdictions, right? Why do they need to do that, right? So the criminal, they want to, say, transfer the goods from, say, for example, from US to Hong Kong to the Philippines, right? Why do they need to do that? Because they want to disturb the audit trail, right? As we mentioned earlier, money laundering, the criminal want to ensure that the audit trail is disturbed and there is not a complete audit trail for the investigator, right? So when the goods travel across multiple jurisdictions, money is transferred from, say, US to Hong Kong, and then from Hong Kong to other parts of the world, and then the money is exchanged, right? So there is a distortion of the whole audit trail, and the criminals are able to transfer the criminally obtained money from one part of the world to other parts of the world. Okay, and goods which are difficult for custom authority to examine. Say, for example, if we are talking about, say, a bag of diamond, custom officials may not know how much that particular bag of diamond worth, right? So they will not be able to query, right? And on the other hand, there were, say, 2 containers of secondhand clothing, right? Customs couldn't care less, right? How can they check the 2 container of secondhand clothing, right? So they can go through the custom easily, right? So that's why quite a lot of criminal, they are moving low value goods, right? And low value goods at high volume. And because low value goods, they are considerably lower in terms of the setup costs, right? Now, examples of goods vulnerable to trade-based money laundering, we mentioned before, right? Gold, diamond, precious metal, secondhand car, secondhand clothing, right? And agricultural product, mobile phone, laptops, right? These are some of the products that are mostly used by criminals in terms of trade-based money laundering. And the common technique is that because there is a mismatch in terms of the invoice value and the fair market value, so people will not know exactly what's the correct price of the goods, right? And there could be a mismatch of the quantity or the quality of the goods, right? In terms of quality, customs will not know, right? Whether the quality is should be say 10 million US dollar or 1 million, right? Would not know, right? And apart from that, very often the seller will not ship any goods at all, right? The whole transaction is faked, right? Why do they want to do that? They want to launder the money from one part of the world to another part of the world, right? And there could be, in terms of documentation, there could be reuse of existing documentation for the same shipment, right? For multiple payment, that is in relation to defrauding banks to provide lending, right? So one shipment, one set of documentation can be used to defraud 7 banks, right? And then the company eventually goes bankrupt, right? So all the banks will lose their money. So that's another type of trade-based money laundering. For so there are two types. One is to defraud the bank and financial institution. The other one is to launder existing dirty money from one part of the world to another part of the world, right? And very often they use shell company, i.e. company that are newly incorporated, right? And no significant asset, no operation. The purpose is to help money launderers to launder the funds, right? And black market trades, right? And I will explain black market trades. Say, for example, drugs were transferred from Colombia to United States, right? So that's illegal activities, right? So the seller in Colombia would want peso, right? And they would transfer the drugs to United States, but the criminal in United States will not have peso. So the criminal or the trader in US will use the US dollar to go to a peso broker, and the peso broker will exchange the money to peso and then pay the seller in Colombia, right? And so in terms of the whole activity is illegal because it's drug trafficking, right? And the transfer of the funds or the exchange was made by the peso broker, right? So the peso broker helped the buyer and seller in terms of the whole illegal activities, right? To allow them to get what they want, right? So the Colombia seller sell the drugs to America and get the peso they want. The buyer in the United States provide the US dollar and then to the peso broker, and then they got the drugs that they want. So in any event, the peso broker is working together with the criminals in terms of this illegal activities, right? So this is money laundering. But on the other hand, legitimate US exporters may be exporting, say, for example, mobile phone to Colombia, right? And this is legal activities. And the in any event, the Colombia importers will only have peso, right? The Colombia importers will use their peso, go to the peso broker, and the peso broker will exchange it to US dollar and then pay the US exporters. So this side is legal activities. So in this way, the peso broker is working together with the criminals on the money laundering side, on the illegal activities. And on the other hand, he's also helping the legitimate trade in terms of the other side. So he's mixing the illegally obtained money with the legally obtained money, right? So this is how it works in terms of the black market peso exchange, right? So the key is the mixing of the criminally obtained money with the clean money, right? Now, in terms of trade finance, it's often used by money launderer to move the funds around, to minimize the costs, right? And the disguise the source of funds through the different banks, right? And the types of instrument that they will use is import-export loans, right? Import-export invoice discounting, right? Letters of credit, or financing or transaction under the letters of credit, i.e. all these are arranged with banks and financial institutions in terms of loans, in terms of providing an invoice and then discounting and getting the amount of money from the banks. So in terms of the money provided by the banks is clean money, right? So the whole process is to get the banks involved so as clean the money and clean the process, right? And also in other circumstances to defraud the banks. So very often trade-based money laundering is involved in money laundering and fraud. And there are a lot of challenges in terms of trade-based money laundering because there are a low number of successful cases, because international cooperation is limited, because very often criminals, they have close bonding on a global basis, right? So they work together in a very sophisticated manner. And on the other hand, the government in different countries, they did not work so closely. And so therefore, the number of successful trade-based money laundering investigation is quite low. And there are challenges because, say, for example, investigators, say, for example, police, they do not have the sufficient expertise to investigate money laundering activities, right? And in any event, the Hong Kong government has been enhancing this particular area in recent years. As you can see, in recent years, the Hong Kong police has enhanced a lot in terms of, say, training the police in terms of how to, say, conduct financial investigation. And say, for example, myself has been, say, going to the police and train them in terms of, say, financial investigation and anti-money laundering investigation, that sort of expertise, i.e. they were trying to learn more and more about what is happening in the financial industry in terms of money laundering and fraud, right? Because they are often seen themselves involved in all these particular areas. And the government has also, say, enhanced a lot, say, in terms of there is a particular channel, right, telling you, say, all the suspicious phone number, etc. And the FPS is going to be enhanced so that whenever you are going to pay FPS, say, entity, and if there is an alert saying that that particular entity could be on the blacklist, then it would give some alerts to say people in the at large, so that people understand that these could be suspicious entities, could be fraudsters, right? So I think there are a lot of enhancement in terms of the regulators, in terms of understanding exactly what is happening in the region, within Hong Kong and internationally, and how to enhance their investigation skills, etc. And also, prosecuting trade-based money laundering require the laundered funds or the assets are process of crime, and a lot of the criminals, they are expert in this particular area. They know exactly how they can deceive the customs by using different types of vulnerable goods, right? So it's quite difficult for the regulators to work together to combat these types of trade-based money laundering. And so a lot of challenges. And another area is a lack of public registry to, say, verify the information provided by their customers. And so that's why the FATF require all countries to ensure that if there are corporations, their shareholders should have a registry allowing the government to know who is the person behind that particular company, right? So currently in Hong Kong, the company's registry keep a register of, say, the shareholders, right? And the ultimate beneficial shareholder or owner, right? So that is a step by the Hong Kong government to follow the FATF requirement. And the trade-based money laundering report also identify a number of red flags. Say, for example, customer red flags, right? If the customer significantly deviate from their historical pattern of trade activities, then that could be, say, suspicious, right? And say, for example, the transaction does not commensurate with the known customer's profile, and the nature of the types of goods is not in line with the business nature of the customer. Say, a steel company start buying paper or buying other goods which is unrelated to their company, then the bank should ask questions, right? And documentary red flags, say, for example, if the LC is talking about how, say, sending goods to location of high-risk countries. Last time we mentioned what are the high-risk countries, right? So you need to combine all you have learned in these different lectures together in order to understand and piece together how you can investigate a money laundering case or a fraud case, right? And significantly amended letters of credit without reasonable justification, right? And unusual codes or marking on the monetary instrument. Say, for example, when you ship documents, there are when you ship when you do the trading of goods, right? When you transfer the goods from one country to another country, there would be codes, right, in terms of the types of goods, and these should be, say, set out in the bills of exchange or the documentation. If these are not clear, then, or if they use unusual codes or documentation, then you would need to ask, right? Any illogical, fraudulent, or improperly modified documents, you need to pay particular attention. Transaction red flags, say round tripping or circular transactions, like what we have learned in our first lecture talking about fraud investigation. I mentioned about a listed company, there were circular transaction, right? And the listed company paying to the supplier, and the supplier paying to the listed company's customer, and then the customer paying back to the listed company. So these are called round tripping or circular transaction, right? And the use of front company or shell company, these are really not good enough, and they should be considered as suspicious. And what else? Commodity, say if we are talking about, say, a diamond from India or military goods, then you need to pay particular attention. And I want you to look at this. The vulnerable goods red flag. Goods vulnerable to trade-based money laundering include jewelry, cigarette, and consumer electronic like a mobile phone, right? And store value cards, right? Precious metal, military goods, bombs, missile, laser, and say electronic equipment, and tear gas or other components, right, which are related to arms and military goods. These could be related to terrorist financing. So You need to be aware of this. And apart from that, dual-use goods, i.e. goods that can be used for normal use and can also be used for, say, making war material or military goods. So these are vulnerable goods, often used by, say, terrorists, right? So these are vulnerable goods, red flags. And next, I want to share with you another area in terms of investigation. And say, for example, when you deal with an investigation, right? You need to do all sorts of procedures that we discussed last time, i.e. you need to, say, interview the suspect. You would need to interview some people who would be assisting you, right? If you see a question in exam, then a number of areas that you need to consider. Say, for example, interviewing, for example, looking at documentation, looking at contracts, right? And using data analytics that you have learned in Vivian's class, right? And also computer forensic is another area that I want to share with you. Because in medium and major size of investigation, we will need to use computer forensic. And how does it work, right? And basically, in terms of investigation, we need to look at the documents, right? The documents could be hard copy and could be soft copy, right? Because of technology. Everything is using technology. And so it is important for us to get information from computer, from laptop, from mobile phone, right? From a WeChat account, from WhatsApp account, right? All these, right? And how do we do that? We need to use computer forensic imaging, right? And normally the process is we need to collect, we need to discuss with the lawyer and the client at first before an investigator starts on an investigation. We will need to know what sort of evidence is required. And then we need to preserve the evidence and then collect the information. How do we do that? Say, for example, if we see that there are probably information and some documents in a particular laptop that would be useful for us, then we will image the laptop or the computer, and then go through the validation, make sure that the image copy is an exact copy of the original, because we will not use the original to do an analysis, right? So we will use the image copy to do the analysis. And then based on the analysis, say, for example, we will review the email. We will use some keyword searches in terms of the area that we are focusing on. If we are talking about inflation of expenses, we'll look at the expenses. We'll look at, say, email in relation to some expenses, right? And depending on who we are going to target at, that particular person's email, we will need to review. And then once we have reviewed the email, look at the files, look at the correspondence, look at the WeChat communication, the WhatsApp communication, then we will identify what are the evidence that we will be able to provide and piece together the findings for our report. So that's how we make use of computer forensic to help us. 4 steps, right? Firstly, you create the image, authenticate the image, copies, and do the analysis. And then at the end of the day, document the findings, right? And the principle is to preserve the integrity of the hard drive, right? To ensure that the other party will not be saying that we tamper the original laptop, right? Ensure that the integrity of the original laptop or hard drive, right? And ensure that there is a chain of custody, and then use the image file for analysis, and then the report that we will use may go to the court as evidence, right? So we need to be very careful in terms of the validation, because at the end of the day, if we have a collected evidence to support a fraud or a theft of assets, then the document needs to be provided to the court, right? Because that's criminal activity. And in terms of, say, keyword search days and files, etc., it will depend on our experience and our estimation, and as to what keyword we need to use, right? The more keywords, the longer the time required, and you need to say ensure that you have the proper coverage of the information required. And then in terms of the report, you will need to set out, say, what you have done, and what sort of findings, what sort of analysis that you have performed. And then very often you will need to give the recommendation. And before you do the group exercise, I want, because this is the last lecture of our program, I was asked to get you to do the evaluation. Can you just hold on a second? Let me take out the file. This is the evaluation instruction for students. Basically, it would be helpful if you can, say, provide your evaluation in terms of the cost. What do you find is helpful, and what are the area for improvement? And you will do the evaluation in terms of the professor and the tutor. So can you spare, say, 5 to 10 minutes, go to this site and then do the evaluation? So can you do it now? And we'll have a break of 10 minutes. During the break, you do it now. And then when we get back, we will do the case study. I want you to work together with your classmates, and then discuss the case, and then do the presentation in class. Okay, so do this evaluation first. You have 10 minutes. Thank you. You finish? Yeah. Then if you finish this, let us do the case study. Okay, so this is the case study. I want you to combine what you have learned in these 3 lectures together with what you have learned in Vivian's class in terms of what you have learned in terms of investigation and in particular, what are the steps that you are going to do? Say in terms of this particular case, it's a United States car manufacturer located in Chengdu, and there was a whistleblower's complaint, and the board of directors in the United States headquarters would like to engage a forensic investigation firm, and you are the partner in the forensic investigation firm, and you were asked to find out what happened, what went wrong in the Chinese operation in Chengdu. And the complaint was in relation to diversion of business, i.e. transfer of business, right? And transfer of the company's business to outsiders, right? Falsification of expenses, bribery, mainly targeting at the general manager of the Chengdu operation, right? So you need to think of, say, how do you investigate the diversion of business? And if there were diversion of business, what can be found in terms of your investigation? What sort of document you will request, right? What sort of people you will talk to? And in terms of falsification of expenses and bribery, it is targeting at the general manager. So you need to know who's the general manager, right? And what sort of expenses are we talking about? And if we are talking about a general manager, we would need to say, look at the expenses of the general manager. And bribery, right? Say, bribery would be difficult to check, right? But in terms of the current case before you, you would need to look at the circumstances, the documents, and also conduct, say, the necessary procedures in order to find out what happened, what went wrong. And you need to set out your action plan, right? Your action plan in relation to the work that you will perform, your analysis, and the findings and the recommendation, right? So what sort of procedure you will perform, and what sort of analysis, right? And what sort of findings, right? Your analysis, what you have done, right? What sort of analysis, i.e., say, for example, you can utilize your data analytics skills to do your analysis. You can use, say, the investigation steps that we have learned, right, in our the first lecture that I was with you, and also in terms of whether there were any say money laundering or any transfer or of say dirty money, right? If we are talking about, say, bribery, that would be dirty money, right? And your findings, and then your recommendation, right? So I would like you to say, discuss with your colleague in a group, and then come out and then tell us the answer. Okay? Any questions? And in terms of the teams, hey, what happened? They've gone. They miss a lot then. And why don't we do it like this? We will have group 1 here, right? You work together as group 1, and group 2, you want to come out and join them as well? Yeah, and you too? How many people? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe you should join this group. Yeah. So 6 people in this group and 6 people in this group. Yeah. You come and join them. And you join group 1. Yep. Okay. Yep. So discuss with your team members, and then you choose a representative to come out and tell us the answer. If you want to come out as a group, that's fine with me too. Yeah. Okay. Any questions? Okay, you can start now. What about you?
Okay.
Okay. Yep. Okay. So why don't you sit together and then discuss? You want to move to shall we have 10 minutes to discuss, and then we'll come out at 5 to 12 to come out and then tell us the answer. Thank you. 2 more minutes. Let's give group 1 will come out first. Let's give a round of applause to group 1. Please come out. Please come out. Use this. Testing. If you want to come out as a group, please do so.
Maybe in first we will do some machine learning and some investigation to find out any outlier of the staff, so we can target our the suspicious general manager. And after we find out the targeting the fraud suspicions, then we can do some investigation on the transaction between him and the supplier, because this is a car manufacturing company, so there should be a lot of transaction to buy the parts or buy some surface to make the car. So to see any cross-border transaction which may be not in the risk high risk country, and to see any abnormal behavior between the billing and transaction. And
so we will also to see the contract, because to see whether there are any suspicious thing in the contracts, whether they have sufficient conditions or terms in the contract, or the market price, whether the price in the contract is too high or too low. Maybe if too high is related to some money laundering, but if it's too low, but then maybe some burglary is happening. So we will also see the transaction of the company, and to see whether the trend or the profit is normal or not. We will also see the transaction between the manager and the supplier, to see whether they have some private transaction to give them money to do something a favor for them. And we will also see about the email between them, so that we can understand more related to their relationship, to see whether there are some private agreement between them. then okay, so let me give you few more points. So we can also see the salary of the employee to see whether their living standard is comparable with the salary. Maybe if they can buy some very expensive car, it means that they may gain some illegal money from the suppliers or other parties. And yep. And also we will review the raw material and the good they sold. So if they buy a lot of raw material for the car, but they did not sell so much car, then it means that maybe some raw material invoice is fake. They really did not buy those material. Yeah. So maybe related to some money laundering as well. That's it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Group One. Group One did a very thorough analysis, right? They are going to use machine learning, right? Some analytic tools, right? And also, you mentioned about doing reviewing the contract, looking at the documentation, and see whether there is any suspicious transactions, right? Very good, very good. And you mentioned about, say, checking whether the general manager is related to some of the bank account, right? How do you do that?
Just if we have some suspicious observed in the previous step, just tell them that we are doing an investigation on you and want to learn more about your transaction or situation. Otherwise, we may escalate the case to law enforcement or some authorities and ask him to cooperate and provide more information for us to review.
Okay. Yeah. This is one way that you can do, but probably he will try to hide everything, right? And another way that you can do is you can work with the HR, try to find out from the company's record what sort of bank account this particular general manager has got, what's the bank account number, and then what's the relationship, and see whether, and then match the bank account as well as the say the spouse, children, etc., and see whether there is any, say, relatives that he that he has got in the company, and match the name, match the bank account with the transactions, and then identify whether there are any areas that would be useful for your investigation. And then once you have got some preliminary findings, and you will also need to interview, right? Interview some people, right? And then once you get the information, then it would be you will be in a position to say interview the country manager, and then as you already got some evidence, then he will not be able to lie to you. Yeah. And I think that's very helpful. So very good try, very good, and very comprehensive answer. Thank you very much, Group One. What's your name?
I'm Simon.
I'm Natasha.
I'm Tommy.
Okay, thank you very much, Group One. Thank you. Let us give them a round of applause. Very good. And Group Two, yes, please come out. Whole group, very good. Thank you.
Okay, we gonna take these questions into 4 steps, and I'm gonna talk about the first step to conduct the data collection, and some steps before we do the analyze. Firstly, we gonna engage by the cooperate headquarters in the US, and to conduct a forensic investigation into the alleged bribery and fraudulent activities as accused by the whistleblower. And there's one thing that we're gonna keep in mind is that we wanted to investigate whether there's anything that meets with the regulation that both in the US, the headquarter, and in China company. And the second step, we're gonna interview the manager, staff, and the suppliers of the company and any key stakeholders. And we're gonna especially review the accounting records and its internal audit reports, and we're gonna conduct that whether there is any like high risk account related to this case. And yeah, we're gonna conduct the company researches and to assess the potential conflict of interest of the management staff. And we're gonna take to the next step.
And then we will do some analysis in several parts. First is the financial analysis. We will review the records of the company and find whether there are some euro transactions, such as on euro expense or payments to other companies, like unknown third parties. And we will, according to the results of the interviews of employees, to see whether there are some dissatisfaction, conflicts, or other things against the manager, and do some analysis. And finally, we will do some culture and manage analysis. We will access to the culture of the management style of the car company, and find whether it may be misconduct, or which will cause the conflicts in the company, and maybe cause the satisfaction of the manager. And
the third part of our the stage are the findings reporting, and in this stage we may mainly implement 3 stages. And firstly, we will report the specific problematic areas. So in this part, we will clearly clarify and identify the issues in different sectors within this organization, maybe the financial management, maybe the internal controls, or the corporate culture. So in our previous stage of the financial fraud analytics, we may find many problems. For example, in the bank statement verification or the monetary cycle investigation, we may find many problems, but in this stage, we will focus on which part of our business went wrong. So, for example, we may find some abnormal or unfair transactions with our connected parties. Maybe the unfair transaction with our suppliers. We may buy those maybe the goods at a high price, so the transaction is unfair. So in this case, we may find that the supply chain management sector within the sector went wrong. And for another example, we may find there are also some abnormal transactions with the government party. So there may be potential bribery behaviors within this specific sector. So first stage within this findings reporting stage will be the identification issues. So our second stage in our finding area will be the specific violation person. So we will clearly find out who has participated in the financial fraud, and we will maybe implement some penalty for this specific person. And third stage of this stage is the impact assessment. Firstly, we may evaluate the losses may have already took place. For example, as the maybe the unfair transactions with connected party, we will evaluate how many losses has generated from this financial fraud behaviors. And we may also evaluate the potential future losses from the existing fraud behavior. For example, the potential regulatory penalty from the government. If the penalty, if this bribery behaviors has took place, the company and the organization may be penalized in the future by the government. So we will also evaluate the future potential losses of this organization. So that's the finding stage.
Okay. Now the first part. 我是还要讲，我是讲一个别的，就是我讲一个别的，接着他的。Well, okay, I have a general idea for another investigation way that because this is an American company, so its financial irregularities, it might be inseparable from the the corporation of the local government. So there are some chain of the benefit. So therefore, when necessary, corresponding information can be obtained from the government departments for the investigation, because during this chain of the interest, the local investigation department, they may not they may still in this chain and do some things, get some things back from the company. So when you are okay, so it is not so trustful and have some enough credibility. So if necessary, at least I think the how to say it, the disciplinary inspection department of Sichuan province is the least. We might need more of the people. And so in addition, you can also visit some of the local company in the same area of the car industry, because they are just some of they may not friends. So have you like to tell these things for you? Yeah, okay.
Well, there are some recommendations. First of all, we can do some improvement measures. We propose measures to enhance internal control, such as strengthening financial audits, improving reporting procedures, and increasing the transparency. Then we can suggest appropriate description, suggest legal actions for any confirmed misconduct. Thirdly, we can train the cultural reform. We recommend some training and reinforce corporate culture, especially the transparency and integrity. At last, we need some long-term oversight and evaluation. We advise the establishment of long-term monitoring mechanisms to ensure the implementation of improvement and to periodically assess their effectiveness. Yes.
Very good, very comprehensive, right? This group, right? They started by talking about how to do it by using data analytic tools, right? And doing interview, reviewing the accounting records, and then move on to say talking about the focusing on the high risk areas, and then talking about the supply chain must be in issue, right? You've got a good point, right? The supply chain is in problem, and then you also try to find out the losses, right? And identify the suspicious transaction, and then I think a very systematic way of analyzing the case, and very comprehensive action plan, and then make very good recommendations, including training, internal control, right? Well, excellent, very good. Thank you very much. Let us give a round of applause to them. Thank you. Oh, your name.
Oh, 邓运成
Kate.
Kate.
黄瑞明。
袁梦桥。
徐云士。
Thank you very much, Group Chair. Thank you. Thank you. I see that both of you has done a very good job, and you have utilized what you have learned in class, both in my class and as well as in Vivian's class, to combine what you have learned in terms of the tools, in terms of the procedures, in terms of what you have learned in analyzing the case. I think that's a very good job. So I think I'm pleased with your performance. Very good. And thank you very much for your participation. And I enjoy working with you, and good luck with your exam. Okay, so that's the end of the lecture. Thank you very much. Good luck. Bye. Thank you.